Welcome to this week's episode of
Hey, I think we're good here.
I'm one of your co-hosts, Jackson Metakekia.
And I'm Matt West. And we're here getting to know the sport of volleyball through the life experiences our guests have to share with us. Come take a listen. Today's episode stars current LMU Head Sand Volleyball coach John Mayer. John is also the host of the most listened to volleyball podcast, Coach Your Brains Out. This podcast can be broken up into two segments. In the first, we discuss John's humble upbringings coming from a house of two teachers, his time in the gnarly environment at Pierce College, how it prepared him for the culture at Pepperdine, kicking a hole through his ceiling from nightmares in the Long Beach Pyramid, losing in the Final Four, then coming back to win a Natty in 2005, and his professional AVP and FIVB career. In the second segment, that starts at about 58 minutes in, we discuss the ecological dynamic philosophy in coaching. John tells us how he is implementing this in his practices and how it's becoming part of his team's culture at LMU. A very, very brief synopsis of the ideology would be creating an environment with a problem, and the athletes need to find out the solution. The talk is great. It's very relevant not only to the sport, but our lives outside of it as well. Check it out.
Johnny, what's happening?
Oh, not much. What's up with you guys?
Just living the dream over here in Reno.
I like the whiteboard.
Thanks.
Are you in the office?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
I like to break my days off a little bit, not just be in the house all day.
I thought maybe that was your room. You're just constantly working.
I sleep here sometimes.
Yeah.
Well,
John, how you been?
For the podcast, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's awesome you guys are doing it.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you on, man. Jackson has been, I think, since the beginning, he's like, we got to get Johnny Mayer on. We got to get Johnny.
Yeah. Well, hopefully I don't let you down. You gotta keep the bar low with me.
Classic. Well, just give us an update on LMU Beach right now and how you guys are doing.
Yeah, we just went through a little preseason, and it's all different. Girls are wearing masks, and we weren't doing high fives, and we're doing small groups. We didn't get to compete. Normally in the fall, our preseason, we get to compete a couple times. And we were limited on campus. Normally we go down to the beach and we have a bunch of courts, and we just had one court. We have this one rec court on campus that we got to use. So we had, we'd run 4 practices a day. We're just, as coaches, we were out there for 6 hours or more. But it was nice. The girls, it was small groups, and it was me and Betsy and my brother coaching. Those 3 coaches, 4 players a lot. So I think hopefully we helped them get better. But yeah, I think it was fun to be out there. It's like one of those things, normal times you'd complain about all of it, and now you're just stoked to be, doing what you love.
Yeah, I feel you on that. It's just any time in the gym is a good time.
Yeah. What was it like for you guys, Jackson?
We just got done with a 6-week training block. Our season obviously got canceled, and then our university set it up where each fall sport would get a 6-week training block, and that's where we create a kind of mini bubble and get tested every week. We were able to go full 6-on-6 volleyball, which was
Nice.
I didn't expect it, but it was pretty cool. And yeah, it was tough because 6 weeks is a long time not to compete against anyone else except your own team. But
Yeah.
I thought the girls did a really good job.
Yeah.
We got better.
That's good. What about for you, Matt?
And we're full speed. And I think we started the earliest in international volleyball. We must have started the earliest out of any other league because we're already 16 matches in.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then it's just dependent. Well, originally, if one player tested positive, then the whole team's quarantining.
Yeah.
And now, because so many teams have had to postpone matches, that it just feels like it's going to be an endless cycle of when are we ever going to finish the season. Now, if one guy tests positive, it's up to 4 people. If they test positive, then they just stay home, and everybody else travels.
Okay.
They test negative.
Have
So
you guys had any on your team?
yeah, we've had 3 outbreaks this season
Hmm.
for sure, but we've been pretty fortunate. Um,
And you're in Germany, is that right?
I'm in Turkey.
In Turkey.
Yeah, but we've been pretty fortunate thus far that it feels like it always comes at the right time when we're just gassed and like there's
Hmm.
just not a lot more we can give, and then it's like, oh, we tested positive. It's like, oh yeah, we're liberated for 2 weeks.
You're you're the first team that's ever celebrated for testing positive for a deadly virus, I think.
I think most teams at this point, because we're playing twice a week, once at home, once on the road, but our road matches are at least 8 hours driving from where we are. So
Wow.
we're spending like upwards of 20 hours of travel. So,
Jeez.
in a month, you're spending 80 hours of travel, plus you're playing 8 matches. So when somebody tests positive, you're like, freedom.
Yeah. Wow. And do you guys normally would fly for those, or is that you guys
Uh,
normally would drive?
I think so. I think for the most part, we would fly to like the really far places in the bigger cities, the Istanbuls and like Izmir.
Mhm.
But for the most part, I think they drive everywhere else. But regardless,
Okay.
it's still traveling's never that easy.
Yeah.
You know. And then right now with everything that's going on, like there's just so many restrictions of what you can
Mm.
and can't do. And nobody really knows.
Yeah.
Still, it's been almost a year and still nobody really has an answer to like what the right thing to do is.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard to know. And then no one knows how long it'll go. I think no one expected we'd still be, I'm sure people did. I didn't expect we'd be so deep in it still. And, the end's not even, I don't think, that close in sight.
Yeah, I remember thinking at the beginning of it, like, oh yeah, by Memorial Day or by the 4th
Yeah.
of July, we'll be back out and it'll
Yeah.
all be good. But,
Yeah.
all right, well, let's get into it, Johnny. Kind of the first question we usually ask is just why volley and how'd you get into it?
Why? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I love sports. I think that was probably the main thing. Just love competing and love playing games. And I still I try to find ways to play games however I can even if it's with my 7-year-old daughter. As a kid, yeah, all the normal basketball, baseball, and flag football. I wasn't tough enough to play tackle football, but would do all that. And then my parents, I think probably in the I don't know what the 84, 88 Olympics volleyball, I think got got noticed, Karch out there winning gold medals. And I think they saw it and they played some adult leagues. So started to just be kind of around it and knew it was a sport, but didn't play it a whole lot. And then I think the biggest thing that happened was in high school, volleyball was really an afterthought for me. I'd do it, but I was all about basketball. But Tom Black, who I think a lot of people know in volleyball community, coaches at Georgia and coached with the U.S. and he coaches the Canadian national team. He comes to my high school and coaches the varsity team. And so, yeah, I got pretty lucky there. And I guess he ended up having a conversation with the varsity basketball coach. And the varsity basketball coach was kind of like debating if he wanted me, like, I don't know if I want this, like, he's a senior and he probably won't play that much. And Tom's like, I'll take him. And so I guess Tom basically ended my basketball career without me knowing it. And he got me out there. I played 1 year of varsity volleyball, and he then said I should play in college, and I didn't even know college volleyball was a thing. So he had me go to a game at Pierce College, which you know well, Jackson. And I went and I watched Bo Daniels and Lance Walker were at Pierce at that time, and I watched that. I was like, wow, this is a really, really high level. I don't know if I could do this, but I ended up going for it, and I went and I redshirted a year there at Pierce. And I think I still, like, even that first year at Pierce, I was like, I'm a basketball player and I play a little volleyball. And then a guy named Yuriv Lerner, who another legend in volleyball, he introduced me to beach, and I started getting beach volleyball, and I just slowly kind of fought my way into it. But I eventually, I think at some point, decided I was a volleyball player. Yeah.
And what years did you go to Pierce? 2001, 2002?
Yeah. I think it was the 2000, 2001 season and the 2001, 2002 season. Yeah.
Okay. And that was kind of when Pierce was in its heyday and winning state championships at the junior college level.
Yeah.
What was it like going into that gym for your first practice?
Yeah, I kind of walked into like a little dynasty. I mean, it's men's volleyball and it's junior college, so I don't know, but it felt like a big deal to me for sure. I was probably overwhelmed. Yeah, like I said, players like Lance and Bo, they had left, and then that next year there was this really stacked team. LMU had dropped their men's program, and I think they had that just at that time, and some of those players had kind of scrambled to find a home, and Pierce ended up picking up a guy named Matt Shube, who ended up playing at UCLA, and then a guy named Dave Niffen, who you guys probably know, who's the coach at UCI. He came in, so he was there, and a guy named D-Raj Coates and just Clint Coe, a bunch of Division I players who ended up playing at a high level. And so I think I was the fourth string setter, and I think I was really worried about being cut that first semester. And the culture there was this culture of like probably fear is a good word, of like intensity of it was crazy. I mean, there's just crazy guys, and this guy named Greg Vernovich who ran the show, and there was a guy who was probably the third string setter. Before we had cleaned up all the nets, he had put his sandals on, or like he wasn't helping clean up the nets, so the coaches saw this, and they gave him probably the gnarliest coach on one, and that guy never came back. So I went from fourth string to third string, just because I was helping clean up the nets a little bit. But that whole year, I mean, I shagged balls and watched Dave Niffen, and there was just guys who were super motivated, who would run through a wall, and it was a pretty gnarly culture, and that team went undefeated. It was a really good team.
Then the next year you played, what were some of the differences?
Next year I played. Actually, Tom Black ended up coming. Greg Vernovich went to Long Beach State, and Tom Black came in and coached, and so I had that relationship with him. And we had the team the year before, it was like a bunch of like third year guys at a JC. Usually it's 2 years, but it was like a really veteran group. So we're kind of a new group. And yeah, a new coach, and but there's just like this. I think Pearson won 2 or 3 in a row at that point, so we had a lot of good players around. I think that year I really was like, there wasn't a lot of competition at the setter position. I pretty much had the position, and we had a pretty good year. Yeah, we ended up winning state, and I was planning on coming back for another year, but got kind of lucky. There's a setter at Pepperdine who was homesick, and he kind of fell through, and so Marv needed a backup setter, and Tom really pushed and got them to notice me, so I ended up getting to go to Pepperdine the next year.
You're on some pretty good teams.
Yeah, I always like to say I think I've played indoors I played, in college I had 5 seasons, 1 redshirt year. I think probably the closest I was like the 4th best player on the team. That was probably like maybe third. 1 year I was the 3rd best, and then beach volleyball I had 30 partners, and I think maybe there was only one of them I was better than. So I think in my 35 teams I've always been a role player or 2nd or 3rd best on the team. Not that I thought that way, but looking back on it.
I know Marv said he told me this, I don't know, when I was at Pep, and you guys had your 4-on-4 tournament, and he goes, man, Johnny Mayer showed up today. Best guy I've ever seen. And he just walked away, and I was like, so I asked him the next day, I go, Marv, you serious, or are you just, And he goes, no, by far. It's the fastest player I've ever coached. Fastest player I've ever coached. And I was like, yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's some plays right there.
Yeah, I guess, but Marvel always just brought in like 6'10" guys, so I don't know if like I don't know if there's that much to play against. But
that's even more admirable that you were playing with all these big dumb animals around you as an
Yeah. I mean that lineup my senior year. Everyone after the game thought I was like 5'6", but that lineup was big. I mean, it was. They'd moved Parfit from the middle to outside. So, he's about 6'7", and, Rooney's 6'9", and Andy Hine was 6'11", and Holst was 6'8", and Winder was 6'8". And then, I was on the right, maybe 6 feet. But it kind of worked out because I didn't have to do too much. I'd just try to pass okay and then cover Rooney. Not that he ever got blocked, but I'd start running that way just in case.
Were you pretty nervous
were you-
going into the gym the first time as a wave?
Oh yeah, big time. That when I was at Pierce my second year, Bo and Lance were at Pepperdine, and it's kind of cool to see people who I had played at Pierce, and I'd go to all the games. So I was a big fan of that team, and I think Rooney was a freshman, and that team was really good. They had beat Hawaii 3 times that year, and then they lost them in the finals. So they had kind of run the table in the MPSF, and so I'd go watch them. And Keenan was Player of the Year, and Bo was an All-American, and Lance was good, and Rooney was good, and Fred Winters. So they're stacked, and then I find myself, I don't know, 4 months later in the gym with those same guys I'd been watching. And I remember the first day I almost felt like I should go like ask Fred Winters for his autograph, and like Brad, like they were just like, they were stars to me, and I was definitely starstruck, and I was intimidated, and it was challenging. And the first, there's no coaches even, it's those like open gyms. So but eventually it kind of just figured out, you figure out it's pass set hit, and you just play hard and figure it out.
Yeah.
Who was the first person that you guys competed against in the MPSF that just gave you guys the business, just took over the match, and you felt like you couldn't do anything about it? And you can't say Rooney because he was on your team.
Luckily I had Rooney in my first year. I had Rooney, Winters, and Keenan, so we had most of the good guys. There's a guy named Kostas Theokaridis who played at Hawaii from Greece, and I remember the same thing. Like I'd watched him the year before. I remember watching him one time that he got set in all 6 rotations and got a kill. Like he sided out, and this was before the BIC was really big, but like, he was that kind of guy who could just, and he wasn't that big. He's like 6'2", and he'd do it in different ways. Like he'd hammer a ball, he'd roll a ball, he'd do different stuff. So I think playing him, again, just like that, I had watched him before I'd played against him. So there's a little like intimidation. But yeah, he was hard to stop. I remember there's a guy named Paul Bocage. I mean, I don't know if anybody remembers these people, but
I remember these people.
Okay, yeah. He was I think that was actually one of my first MPSF matches was against Stanford, and they had Kurt Topple and Kevin Hansen and Bocage, and I remember seeing hitting lines. Bocage, it was in Firestone, and I mean it looked like he could hit it back under the net. He was super physical and a big arm, and it wasn't that long ago I was playing JC guys, and it's like, so I'm supposed to go out there and like play against that? I don't know. But yeah, I remember seeing some of those guys and just being like, this is it's a high level, especially that first year. It's a big jump.
It's got to
Kind
be
of up to that point.
Go ahead, Jackson. Sorry.
Up to that point, when you're at Pep, who are some players you try to emulate, like, or take your game after?
Yeah, I'd have to think back. No one jumps out that much. I mean, I remember watching Ty Trambly, who was a good setter, and just a little guy and scrappy and would run around and kind of go for everything. I liked him a lot. Tyler Hildebrand, I never felt like his hands were just so much better than mine. I didn't feel like I could set like him, but I just remember being impressed by him. He was a freshman that year. My first year, he was a freshman. But yeah, I think mainly I was just trying to like keep my head above water and like not mess up. I think I was looking around too much. James Cobb was on that team and was a good setter too, and I'd watch him. But I think I felt the biggest pressure. Like I thought Bo was so good, and I was so like in awe of him, and kind of like feeling like I wasn't Bo and I wasn't near as good as him, and I was playing with a lot of those same hitters that he was setting, and I think I just felt the pressure of like, not being good enough or not doing enough. And but Marv was so, he's so good at building people up. Like I think he recognized it, and I remember him calling me in and just kind of like talking it through, like hey, you're not that he was comparing me to Bo, but like you're good at this, you're good at that, you're good at, you don't need to worry about all that. So I was lucky to have him with me. I think a lot of coaches could have just probably enhanced those negative thoughts I was having and made me feel worse about myself.
Did you feel like there was a significant difference between the culture at Pierce and the culture at Pep, or was it pretty comparable because of all those guys that you'd played with before?
Greg Vernovich Vern, he had played at Pepperdine, and I think he had played at Pep, and you always hear like, of course, every person's going to be, it was so much harder when I was there, and way back then, and I hate those stories, like I hate those, like, but there's probably some truth to it. Like Marv was probably a little gnarlier, and some of those guys like Chip McCaw and Vern and some of that crew, I think they were just like, they had a screw loose, like they were crazy. So I think Vern probably tried to do what Marv did, and I think he took it to his own level. So I think that was the one nice thing, where it was like going to Pepperdine, it didn't feel like as like if you made one mistake, you're getting a 5-minute coach on one. But I think there was some of the similarities. Like we played a lot of volleyball, we competed a lot. I don't know, you weren't going to get like overloaded with feedback and overthinking too many technical things. Like they were going to let you play and let you be free. But yeah, I think the cultures were not that far off. Like they weren't that far apart. So I think it was a nice transition.
Yeah, that's great. I think that always feels like it's the hardest part, especially as a setter, to identify yourself and like, because you have to have your own personality, obviously, and like what you're good at. Like you said with Marv, like he enhanced some of the things that you felt weren't like your strong suits.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like you're an assistant coach out there, so you really got to resonate well with your head coach. So it's like, man, if we don't understand each other, this is going to be a long 3 years or 4 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Marv's great with it. And there was a good staff. Rick McLaughlin was there, and he's just such a positive guy. And like he always, he worked with me, and actually Chip worked with me as well. So I felt like I had a really good support system. Sometimes I think I had the coaches more on my side than, I mean, Rooney was hard to play with. Like that guy, he wants to win more than anybody. And I'm glad I had him with me, but if you didn't set him, or if you didn't set him in the right spot, you got to hear about it. And Brad Keenan was the same way. There's guys, they wanted the ball more and they wanted it in a different spot. So I think thankfully it wasn't, players riding me and the whole coaching staff. And I think I had the coaching staff kind of on my side, and the players were all over me.
Looking back, because this is something that I've certainly battled with as a setter, is like sometimes you take too much grief.
Yeah.
And you're like the I'm sorry guy. And then once you become the I'm sorry guy, then like they're relentless.
Yeah.
Do you ever look back, or if you work with setters now or when you were in the indoor game, do you ever tell them like, hey, don't take so much shit? Like you got to be tougher here?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Chip would tell me like, once it's out of your hands, it's not your problem. Like, don't worry about it. Like stop. Yeah. And I think you start to figure out like, I mean, on that team, like Fred never complained. So you just start to set that guy like, all right, I'll set Fred. Like Rooney and Brad, like it's not good enough. All right. Like, so kind of in like a non-confrontational way, which it's probably better just to address it. Like, hey, what you're saying to me is not helping me right now. Like, I don't want to set you. And like, I'm overthinking every set. Like I need, I know when I miss, like I know when so I wish I probably would have stepped up more, but instead I'll just set Fred. And I think then probably Rooney and Brad figured out I better be nicer to this guy. But yeah, I don't know if I'm quite answering your question, but yeah, I think in hindsight, I think it would have been more helpful at times. I mean, I think there's like that balance of like, as a setter, like you're kind of serving the team and like trying to figure out how you can always, do something better for them. But like, I don't know, at some point you got to stand up for yourself.
For sure. I agree 100%.
You know way better than me.
Standing up for himself.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I'd imagine, I mean, yeah, I think I evolved too. Like the next year I think I felt more confident, and I could, I just wouldn't put up with as much. And yeah, I think, and I'm sure, now as long as you've been setting, you're just clear on who you are and like what's important to you, and you can stand up for it. At that point, I wasn't ready to do that.
Yeah, there's just some guys. I mean, we've talked about him multiple times. Winder, I don't know where he gets it or how he got it, but like, I mean, Marv told me multiple times, I had to calm that guy down as a freshman. Like he came in
Yeah.
blazing. I was like, man, to be
Yeah.
18 and go in and like take the reins, that takes balls.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a big thing
No,
to do.
I think that's the first thing that jumped out to me about him. I got to watch that freshman year, and probably watched through biased eyes because like I wanted to set, like that was my position, and he took it. And I mean, I figured out pretty quickly that it made sense to have him set. But the first thing that stood out wasn't like it didn't feel like he was a really good setter at that point. Like for a freshman, he was good, but he wasn't really good. But he was a really good competitor. Like he was a good leader, and it didn't feel like the moment was too big ever. So it's like, yeah, he's not going to be lightning quick. He doesn't have a great sense of how to run an offense quite yet, and he's going to miss a little bit. But like he's going to compete hard and he's going to lead. So we'll figure it out from there. And then I think all the other stuff. I mean, by senior year, he had all the intangibles.
For sure.
What year was the Lewis match?
That was my first year.
That was your first year. So NCAA Final Four. So you've told me before that that's one of the most disappointing losses you've ever had, just because it meant so much to you, and you had Pepperdine has high standards, but you probably had some expectations for yourself. After that disappointing loss, what's that summer like, and what's that next preseason like, and how do you build?
Yeah, it still stings. Yeah, I still feel it. I think Pepperdine had such a tough loss the year before. Like I said, they'd beaten Hawaii 3 times and then lost to them in the final. And I think that group was hungry. This was Brad's senior year, and they wanted some redemption. And we were number 1 all year, my first year at Pepperdine. And we went to the Final Four, I think still number 1, and playing a school from the Midwest called Lewis. And at this point, the Midwest, hadn't had the years they've had more recently. And we didn't know much about them and kind of just thought we'd walk through them, and we were more getting ready for BYU. And that Lewis team played really well. And I mean, they ended up losing they vacated that title because they had a bunch of pros on that team. But yeah, it was a brutal loss. Like we were up 13-11 in the 5th and got stuck in row 1. And I probably could have set better. And we, so we were, so there was a lot to chew on and a lot to think about. And I think it was too tough, like 2 bitter pills for Pepperdine to swallow 2 years in a row. That summer I had, back then it was, you'd only watch through TV, so my parents had taped it on ESPN, and I think I'd put it in like almost every day when I was at home. And I had back in my parents' house, I was on a bunk bed. I was up on the top bunk, and I had a dream that, because this game was in the pyramid at Long Beach State, which is a gym in the shape of a pyramid. And I had a dream that the pyramid was falling on me, and I actually kicked a hole through the roof. It was the old like cottage cheese roof, and woke up like in a sweat with like my foot in the in the attic. So obviously it weighed heavy on me. I remember just like watching it, like looking at what I could have done better, and just being like so committed to being better the next season. And I mean, I was playing beach all summer and just playing lots of volleyball, and just came in to that preseason on a mission. I remember like getting my roommate, like, all right, we're gonna go for a run. Like we're gonna go run and do push-ups at the beach. And it's not that it was gonna help us be better at volleyball, but Rocky did it, so we were gonna do it. So I was really motivated to be better. That match had a big effect on me.
This makes so much sense. Jackson said you guys were watching UCLA Long Beach like 2-3 years ago, and they got stuck in row 1 in set 5. And he was like, the first thing Johnny Mayer said was, row 1, it'll get you.
Yeah. It's still have nightmares about it. I mean, I think row 1's always tough, but yeah, I remember, we had a couple of challenges there. We didn't, our right side had a tough game, and we had subbed in a new right side in row 1. So I didn't feel comfortable setting him on the left. And Andy Hine was in the middle as a freshman, and I think we were a little out of system. I couldn't quite set him. So I'd set Rooney, I think 2 or 3, and probably a little tight, and they had made a couple of digs, and we call a timeout. And I think Chip tried to talk me into running an X2 with Rooney and to set Fred a D. And we hadn't done it once that whole year. And I didn't do it. I'm just setting Rooney, and I set him. I think he got blocked. And, but yeah, I remember like Chip kind of after, like, could have run a D there. Like, like, I don't know. So yeah, I just had all those like thoughts running around, you know, what I could have done, what I should have done. But yeah, that was brutal.
So do you feel like there was a significant, aside from Rooney being a senior and having experience at this point and like going through, well, all of you guys going through these ups and downs and like this adversity as a team, what did you feel like was the changing points your senior year that took you over the edge to become national champions?
Yeah, it's
If
always hard to
Rooney
say.
being like that good, then I just
Yeah. I mean, I think there's like luck and, you know, there's all like random circumstance. Like I'd imagine, I think Bo's team was probably better than our team that won the championship. And even the team my first year was a little bit more talented. So there's, you know, all sorts of random factors, but I mean, that team, yeah, I think James Caw, Rooney and I had been through a lot. And I think Rooney was significantly better than anybody in the country. I think he made something like 6 hitting errors on the year, and he got set every ball. You know, he hit the court a lot. And Winder came in as a really good freshman. I think Andy Hine was starting to really blossom, and we won a bunch of sets in the fifth. Like I think we were like 8-0 in 5 setters. So maybe some of that like senior, you know, experience paid off, but I don't know. Who knows? It's probably just we got lucky.
that's a lot of it.
Yeah, for sure.
People don't want to admit it, but like injuries, sickness, matchup,
Yep.
like that's all part of it if you're gonna win.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah, no, for sure. And who else is in the league that year? And I mean, there's so many factors. But we were consistent. We were steady. I think we got along pretty well. We really only had, I think that was the funny thing about, I don't know if it stayed that way, but at Pepperdine, especially then, we had like kind of 7 guys who could play. And then our second team, you know, we wouldn't have beat the Pierce team for sure. We wouldn't have beat too many teams. I think that year we had, because James, Winder, and I were on the court. So the second team was Rick McLaughlin was setting it. Like we didn't have a backup setter. I think we like Craig Buck had to come in and play sometimes. And I mean, he was like 45, 50 at that point. You know, we were having to bring guys in to make practice even competitive. I remember Winder got hurt one time and Stork came in and set on the first team. But yeah, I remember watching like hitting lines. You'd watch UCLA and like in between games, you know, it's like the second team guys and they're just thumping balls. And like our guys are like just hitting the tape and like it just wasn't like, man, we're like, if one of us goes down, like, you know, it's going to get tough. But we stayed healthy and we just, like we played UCLA in that final and they had this team that changed a lot. Like their lineup was always different. And so I don't know if they had that same cohesion, you know, going into a 5th set in a title game. We were just the same 7 guys who had played every point of every set. So maybe that helped out.
Yeah, I mean, we were the same way all 4 years. I think.
Yeah.
Maybe we had a 7th man.
Yeah.
But other than that, it was like, all right, this is it. We're going, guys.
Yeah. Yeah. But good, always good guys. Like there was guys you wanted on the team and guys, I mean, I remember when we won, like I went to some of those guys first, the guys who weren't even traveling, but that were just kind of part of our group that celebrated with them. They're all a big part of it. I don't want to take away from what they did because we had good, like hardworking people who were committed to their role and to helping us all be great. So, I mean, I think that's, you know, good teams, everyone knows their role and they do it as well as they can. And Marv's the best at figuring out how to do that.
For sure. We've had a couple talks about role clarity and how important it is as a coach. He was saying, I don't know if he's told you that story about Ricky Ludes.
I don't think so.
So he said before the Olympics.
You got to do it in his voice though.
He's like, hey, before the Olympics, you know, Ricky Ludes comes in. And I was like, all right. And he said, yeah, Ricky Ludes and I are duking it out for like 3-4 hours. Because Ricky Ludes thinks like he's better than Stork. He's like, I'm better. You should take me. I should be starting. And Marv's like, look, you're the best second setter in the world. I don't know what you want from me. We're winning a lot with Stork. We've lost like
Yeah.
6 matches in the last 3 years. And Ludi said, all right, then I'm out. And he was like, it killed me because he's obviously a great talent. But I was like, all right, if that's how you feel, that's how you feel. But that's what's important to me, was that we know that Stork is the guy.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it can be hard as a coach to be that honest. Like you kind of want to make everyone feel good and maybe fluff them up. But Marv's really good about being direct, but like that story, like he was direct, but he also said he was the second best setter in the world. Like, you know, he wasn't like, you know, throwing him under the bus. So I think there's also a way to be direct in a kind way. And that's where Marv's really good.
So after your senior year, you're playing beach throughout college, like on the weekends, during the summers and all that. But when did you actually decide you wanted to pursue beach as a career?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I probably, even now, it never felt, it's just like, I just liked doing it. So I kept doing it. I don't know if career is the right word. Yeah, I mean, as soon as indoor season was done at Pep, I was on the sand. 2003. So I guess after my second year, or my first year at Pep, I think I qualified for an AVP event, and I think Rooney and I would play a couple and qualify. And I was starting to like really, really love it and see that that's what I wanted to try to pursue. So yeah, just kind of, it was happening throughout college. Like I was playing CBVAs and playing and really seeing the impact it made on my indoor game. I felt better each year coming back to indoor. I felt stronger. I felt more mobile. I felt like my ball control is better. And I really think, I mean, that's the only reason I was able to play, probably even be in the lineup my senior year, is because I had played a lot of beach. You know, my limited volleyball experience, I'd only set. I'd never been in serve receive indoors. I'd never played any position but setter. But because of all those beach reps, I think I was like, yeah, I don't know, I'll try to hit an angle, like set me and we'll see what happens. Usually if you set it fast enough, there's one block, and that's kind of like beach. So yeah, I guess it was just all throughout. And then, yeah, kind of, I think some of those first summers went good enough for me to keep doing it. And the tour was in a pretty good place at that point. It was, there was like 16 to 18 events, and it seemed like there was something there to keep going after.
That's a cool gig that you guys have in California. You guys have that ability. You're just like,
Yeah.
you know, like let's play AVPs while we're 16, 17, 18. That's awesome. Like what great exposure.
Yeah. Yeah, you could I mean, I remember at Pierce we would go play in the summers, and you know, you'd play on a court, and right next to us would be Dane Blanton and Jason Ring and Kevin Wong, and these guys who like you'd watch on TV were, you know, just the court next to you. And I could, you know, we'd mainly focus on what we were doing, but you could see pros, you know, on the same courts on the same beaches, and could see the way they approach practice. And so, yeah, I had that exposure. And then, yeah, like going to the Manhattan Beach Open and the Hermosa tournaments. And it just gave like kind of that dream that you could chase. You could just like, wow, this would be really cool to do. Not that I felt like it was a reality, but I guess it just gave me a taste of it, of what was possible.
Well, it had to have been a pretty fun ride, because you got to travel the world. You got to compete for a long time.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, I think initially I was just like, you know, I think I gave myself like a 5 year. It's like I'll give myself 5 years, and then if I'm not still improving or going anywhere, then I'll, you know, get a real job. And I don't know, at some point that 5 years, I guess, went by and I kept going. But yeah, I think looking back on it, I definitely surpassed any expectations I had. And yeah, I got to play, I mean, yeah, in the Middle East and in China and Brazil and all over Europe, and got to play with all sorts of different partners. And yeah, I got to be pushed and challenged and play through stress and play in a hailstorm and, you know, in 110-degree weather, and, you know, just all sorts of different experiences. So yeah, I'm so thankful for what I got to do.
How many? Sorry, Jackson, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead, Matt.
How many years did it take for you to become a main draw team?
Yeah, so that first summer, I think 2005, where we had won, Rooney and I played, and I think I had already had some points, so I don't think I was quite main draw, but like I think Rooney and I, after about 4 tournaments, we were in the main draw. And I remember we were actually working Marv's camp. And he's like, "Hey, I just did the points and we're in the main draw." I'm like, "What?" So I remember we were just like so stoked that we didn't have to play the qualifier. And so, yeah, I think it was that first summer we were main draw. And then, of course, Rooney dropped me for a guy named Brian Lewis, who was kind of a legend of the game. So I think then I dropped back down to the qualifier and kind of finished that summer where I was like right on the brink. And I went into that next summer where I had enough points to be in the main draw, and there were some options I had to play with. There were some players who were good players, but I didn't think they were great players. And I decided to play. I kind of talked Brad Keenan. I thought Brad would be a really good beach player. And at that point, he had quit volleyball, and he was an accountant, and he was overweight and out of shape. But I just knew like he had indoors, like he had really good hands. He had a big jump serve. He could block the ball, which are all things you want on the beach. So I talked him into, and I think he wasn't loving, working in the real world. So kind of talked him into it, and he had 0 points. So it took me from like being in the main draw to playing in qualifiers, but I knew he'd be worth the risk. And I was young enough that it was a good risk to take. So that summer the first couple we didn't qualify, and I remember being so frustrated because I was, I'm a main draw player. And I, had thoughts of like changing partners, but we stuck it out and ended up having a really good summer. And obviously he had a good beach career as well. So yeah, that was always a hard part of it. Do you play the points game and play with maybe a inferior player, or take a risk on like the right player and kind of work together and build a team together?
So you said you rarely felt like you were the best player on your team. But what was it like being named the MVP of the AVP?
Yeah, that was a big surprise. Yeah, I remember because I would never like even go to the banquets. They do those banquets every year, and like, what am I gonna do there? But I remember they had I think the CEO, he's like, "Hey, make sure you're there." And I kind of thought, okay, so I had a good year that year. We had won a number of tournaments and we had done well. And I thought maybe I'd get like best defensive player. So I think I had thought for like, because they have you do a speech, like Todd Rogers goes up there, or Kerry Walsh or Misty, and you watch them give a speech, and like, glad I never have to do that. But yeah, so I like kind of thought about what I would say as, if I get best defensive player. And I remember, so I ended up getting in. I do, a little speech like, "Oh, thankfully I'm done." And I think I was talking with like Jake Gibb before. I was like, I was like, "Jake, you got your speech ready? I think you're going to be MVP." He's like, "Oh, no, it's going to be Phil," or I don't know. And then I remember Mark Sherman for the men's AVP started to announce it. He's like, "And I've known this guy for a long time." And I'm like, "I've known Mark for a while." And he was my coach. And I was like, "Wait, I coached Mark." So and then he says mine. And I was like, "What? Wait, what?" So yeah, I was really just shocked. And I think went up there just like deer in headlights. And I remember like, what am I supposed to say? And like April Ross is telling me like, "Thank your wife." Like, yeah, I was just like, so I was just all in shock. But yeah, that was pretty cool to just be recognized. The players vote on it. And it was cool that I was recognized for that, and a surprise.
When did obviously it's an active choice, but was it an active choice to start playing internationally, or was it something that was more forced upon you because you had gotten into such a good position that people were like, "We need you here"? Or were you like, "I want to do this"?
Yeah, I think right now when players come to the beach game, that's like the first dream. Partially, I think the FIVB beach tour has grown, and then partially the AVP has shrunk.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where the top players go. When I first came to the AVP, the AVP was, like I said, there was 18 events, and I didn't really know that much about the FIVB. Like, it was like, I want to do like watching, Eric Fenoy Moana or watching Todd Rogers. Like, that's what I want to do. Like, I want to be in the Manhattan Beach final, and I want to play that. So that was really my dream. And then yeah, kind of as I went through it, you started to realize, oh, the top players, they go over to Europe and they play some of those events. And if I want to get a really good blocker, I've probably got to say, I want to do that too. So I think I just started to realize that if I wanted to keep accelerating, keep moving up, that I'd have to at least try to tell blockers that's what I wanted to do. And then as you get to that point, and then, yeah, I mean, I think as that tour grew and you just started to see those events, like, oh, it'd be really cool to go to Klagenfurt or to go to, Berlin or go to Stade or wherever. And yeah, so yeah, I think it just kind of happened naturally, but that wasn't my initial like dream. That's not what I saw. Like that wasn't the big goal, but it changed.
When did an Olympics come into that? Pretty soon after, of like that's now the end game, or did that ever occur?
Yeah, it definitely it was a thought. uh, I'm trying to even think back. I mean, in 2016, like we were in the mix, me and Ryan Doherty. I think it's a 2-year process, so it starts in 2015. And even Brad and I think had a little look at it in 2012. But so to play in the Olympics, you really have to commit to the FIVB, and you have to make a lot of irrational choices. You have to decide to go to China instead of Manhattan Beach. So that's what ends up happening, right? There's a tournament in Manhattan Beach where I can, sleep in my bed and go play and make a good amount of money. Or I can fly to China and I can play another American team, not even in the tournament. They call it a country quota. So I have to play another American team to get into the qualifier, and I have to pay for that flight and the hotel. And there's a 50% chance I'll lose the country quota, and then a 50% chance I'll lose in the qualifier. And so you kind of have to make these choices along the way. And I generally erred towards the AVP, and partially because it wasn't a home run for me to go commit to the FIVB, because I was at that level, but I was at the bottom part of that level. Obviously if I was playing with Phil and I was as good as Todd, oh yeah, let's go. We're going to put ourselves out there. But so I think I just made some calculated choices, and maybe I could have given myself more opportunities, and maybe I would have lost all those country quotas and I wouldn't have given myself, but it's hard to know. But yeah. I definitely overall erred towards playing AVPs and just playing in tournaments. So yeah, that's kind of the situation you have to be put in a little bit. And yeah, I definitely didn't give myself the best chance to make the Olympics. I think the 2016, I think we ended up finishing third, and the top two make it, but we were third there was a big gap. So yeah.
And this whole time, or I think your whole beach career, you're also coaching on the side, which most beach volleyball players have jobs on the side, so you're not very unique to that, but it's tough. But as you're coaching and as you're playing, when did you decide you wanted to be a coach after you were done playing?
Yeah, I think I knew all along. I mean, I think I was very lucky to find a job that I really enjoyed, and it was a consistent paycheck, where some beach players have to maybe wait tables or do stuff they don't, or they're not necessarily building a career. So I think I knew that that's always what I'd want to do. And that it was really lucky to be I was with you at Santa Monica College, and I knew that I was going to learn how to coach, and I was going to build my resume, and I'd set up my career long-term. So yeah. And I always felt like it helped. I mean, there was negatives, it definitely, there's sacrifices, because I'd have to miss a tournament here or there, or, just when you want to be elite, you want to put every ounce into lifting and rehab and competing. And when you're coaching and on your feet and doing stuff like that, it takes away from it. But there was lots of benefits too. I feel like I, understood the game at a higher level, especially as a beach player. You really have to write your own practice a lot. You don't always have a coach. So I was more mindful about what was important in practice. And then I think vice versa, competing, you understand how hard it is and how hard it is to get better. So then as a coach, I think I was able to bring just a little more empathy and hopefully kind of be there for the players more. So there's definitely benefit doing both. But I loved coaching. I always felt like it was like, this is the second best job in the world. Like playing's the best and then coaching's the second best. And eventually I think as it got to the end of my career, I think they kind of flip-flopped, like coaching is the best job in the world and playing's second best. But yeah, I always loved it, and I still do.
That culture that you guys established at SMC was so much fun to be a part of. I was there for maybe 3 weeks, and I was like, I love this gym. It's just
That's right.
fun.
Yeah, those are good guys. Man, the junior college men's game, and I don't know the women's as well, but it's just some like special breed of people. It's and we had some really good guys, and something I really tried to do, and I think Pierce did, is we just kept a lot of people. Like we never made cuts, and it was more like if you're able to kind of show up at 6 a.m. and shag balls or work hard, then you get to hang around. And so you just end up getting people who really love it and who are really committed to it. And yeah, it's just a fun level. Jackson's was a part of it for a long time too. But yeah, I have definitely a special place in my heart for JC volleyball.
You guys were just really fair, which is hard to find in gyms. Again, I know that sounds elementary, like, oh, they were fair, but it's just reality. Like, you guys gave everybody a fair shake, even when I was in there, and you guys were prepping to get into playoffs, and then you were in playoffs, and I just kept thinking to myself, each individual on this team still has a chance, because John might give you a chance still, which is pretty cool, and that's also really hard to find simultaneously, and I thought that was great. And just like, even if they were, for both of you guys, even if they were the third libero, like, you were still working with them, and I was like, they care, they're fair, and they care. This is great.
Yeah,
it was no wonder that the guys bought in.
Yeah, it's awesome for you to say that. I remember watching Tom Black run his LMU team, his indoor team, because I don't think I was always like that, and I still feel like I could be better at being more fair. But I remember watching him. I was like, he's giving all this feedback to like his third string opposite. Why is he doing that? And why is he wasting his time there? But I think he cared about every person on his team, and he wanted to help. If everyone feels like they're growing and improving, and that their coach cares about them, then yeah, it's like that whole thing. Like, if we're all rowing the boat the same direction, like, we're a way better team, and the coach can play such a big role in that. And it doesn't take that much time to show that you care, but it does take some thought and some preparation on how you can do it, because it's easy to just invest in, like, oh, I've got to invest all my time and the starters and the people who will play, but just a little more attention and time for everyone goes a long way.
I think that's where I balanced you out really well, was I can spend some time with some guys that are never going to see the court and give them some feedback and kind of build a relationship with them, so you can kind of focus on maybe the four outsides who might start or something like that.
Yeah, no, that's big, is the staff. I think having a great assistant is important, and having you was huge. And that was our best years when you were with us. But I remember, I always go back to Marv, but Marv, I feel like he knew some of the guys who would flip the scoreboard, and he knew more about like them than sometimes some of the starters. Like he just, he'd always have, like, I think with everybody, like, he has his like one kind of go-to kind of conversation starter, like, and just someone who is not just like, hey, how's it going? But it's like, he remembers something about your family, or I don't know, some inside joke you guys have. Like, he just is good about finding that with everyone. And I think, like I said, I remember him, it's like, why is he spending so much time with that guy? Like, just because he cares about people and he cares about the team.
Yeah. That man is remarkable. It's remarkable how many things he remembers.
Yeah.
You're right. He has a quirk with everybody.
Yeah, a quirk's a good word. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody that walks through that gym, he remembers their middle name or whatever.
Yeah.
something.
Or a good story, yeah. So, something he can like, maybe give you a hard time about, or I don't know, something that'll make you laugh.
Yeah.
What's your give us a good Marv story, one of your favorite ones, on or off the court, doesn't matter.
There's quite a few. I mean, one, just because we were talking about it earlier, when we lost in that tough semifinal to Lewis, and I felt like I'd blown it, like I didn't set right or set the right person or set too tight or whatever. I remember sitting in the locker room just like I just lost Pepperdine and a championship, and yeah, he just came in, and I think I just remember him just like sitting next to me and saying how proud he was of me of the year I had, and kind of just took me from the basement to just probably back to what I became, as like super motivated that next summer, like, all right, I'm gonna go get after it. And so yeah, that was a big one. I mean, there's a bunch of them, like stuff you'd give me a hard time about. I mean, still will joke about, I think I'm the only player who came out of Pepperdine making money off the per diem. They'd give us, like $7 or something for lunch. And
he brings that up. He brought that up to us.
Did he? Yeah. I bet.
Rio Granada would try to do the same thing.
Yeah. I mean, I was raised by, two teachers, and we rarely ate out. And as a kid, so like, okay, we're going to McDonald's. All right, I can get the 2.99 burgers. I got 14 cents here for the tax. I can pocket $5, and here we go. So yeah, he'd give me a hard time about that. But yeah, there's all sorts of that, stuff like that. I think one time my little brother, who Marv was just amazing too, he would have, my brother's 12 years younger than me. So he was, I don't know, like 9 years old when I was playing at Pepperdine. He would come into the locker room and do the waves call, and he really made him a part of our team. And I think one time Marv's like, hey, I think we were up at Stanford actually, and hey, why don't you come on the bus and go back to the hotel with us? So my little brother Joseph comes with us, and so I think I was supposed to like kind of keep an eye on him. And we go to check into the hotel, and all of a sudden, I think me and Marv was like, hey, where's my brother? Like I lost him. I guess he had like gone with, I don't know, probably like James Cobb probably took him somewhere. And still, so Marv gives me a hard time about losing my brother. Yeah, but I don't know, like, how does he remember that stuff? And he'll bring it up, and yeah, there's all sorts of that stuff.
That's cool. What's your favorite Marv story of in match? Because he doesn't say a lot to setters. Usually he'll tell you one thing where like, oh, okay.
Yeah. He didn't talk to me that much as a setter. I remember in our national championship match, I think we were going into the fifth, maybe going into the fourth. I can't remember which one, but we had been a little shaky in serve receive. So he called over, it's obviously a high pressure match, and we were at Poly Pavilion, and it was, packed house, and he calls us over, me, James, and Rooney, who were in serve receive. He's like, hey, I can't pass gas, but I think if so he cracks the jokes, but if we pass the ball a little bit, we're gonna be okay. I don't know why that's, kind of like lighten the mood, like, hey, passing's hard, but like maybe if we kind of focus on it, it'll make a difference. So yeah, I don't remember many like technical, like, hey, you got to put your left hand here when you block. I mean, he was always good about blocking stuff, and he'd be all, I guess he'd be all over, hey, you got to be head up on that guy. But yeah, I think he's really good about letting you be free and letting you compete. He's not going to overcoach. I think anytime. I think that's one of his big strengths. He knows so much. Like he could break down the game at a really high level, but he's not going to, vomit it on you.
Do you feel like you're the same way as a coach, or do you lean more towards the tactical and skills of the game? We've talked about this with Aaron, of like the art versus the science. Which way do you lead? And I'd be curious if you're the same as a player and as a coach.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've evolved. I'd like to believe. I mean, I think that hopefully the science guides what I do, and then of course you've got to have, some opinion and some art in there. I think I'm kind of at like a coaching crossroads right now. But I think I went through like different waves. So I think initially I was pretty hands off, and then kind of getting into like GMS stuff and getting into like Tom Black, the way he coaches, I was pretty hands on. And now as I've kind of gotten into this like ecological approach, this constraints led approach, I've gotten really hands off. So I don't know. I'm just a mess. Who knows? I don't know what I'm doing.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to ask you about that. I text Aaron to see if he had any questions for you, and I've listened to a couple of your later podcasts.
Yeah.
Just give me a brief.
Oh boy.
Listening to your Kreider podcast. I don't know if brief is a thing, but yeah, kind of where are you at on that coaching crossroads?
It's all Casey Kreider's fault. Another wave. Yeah. He's got me going down. I'm sitting up at night just like, what am I doing? I don't know how to coach. A brief. So let's see. And one of the challenges of this approach is the language. Like there's a barrier there. So I think the traditional approach is that there is a perfect way, or there's like an optimal way to move, and there's an end point. And the coach has has kind of the methods of how to do it. And he's going to tell you, or she's going to tell you how to get there. Here's the steps. It's like a very linear, right? You're going to go from here to here to here to here, and that's where you want to get. And this more ecological approach is more, the coach is the provider of the problem, not the solution. So in the other approach, the coach is like giving you the solutions. Here's how you do it. In the ecological approach, we're more providing a problem, and there isn't necessarily it's more of a non-linear path. Like you want to explore kind of all these different areas, so you have different responses to the problems you face. So the coach provides maybe some sort of challenge, some sort of problem for you to try to solve, and the idea is self-organization. The player will self-organize and try to figure out the best way for them to solve the problem, versus me continually saying, try this, do that. You did this, you should have done this. So maybe a little bit more hands-off. So I don't know. Does that make any sense?
It makes a ton of sense. To me, it sounds a lot like guided discovery, and kind of with a different shake on it when you say like presenting the problem.
Big thing too.
Yeah.
So what was that? What'd you say?
That's Mara's big thing, is this guided discovery that you guys speak of.
Yeah.
I'll teach you one day, Matt.
No, that's all right. I play in Europe. It's all guided discovery.
Yeah. But,
yeah, I think it can come off as like, oh, the coach is in the corner and like, yeah, good luck. It's not that. It's very individual based. So it's like looking at each player, like what is the main problem, the main challenge, and how can I constrain that? Like, how can I maybe nudge them towards a different solution, or change something in the environment that would want them to explore it in a new way. And also kind of, feedback. It seems like one of the worst ways of feedback is instruction, like a coach saying it. So trying to more get the player to attune themselves to all the feedback around them, like the feedback of what did the block do against me there? Where did the defense play? What did that sound like? Kind of getting players to notice all the feedback that's actually going on and take that feedback into the next play. I think another big thing is, so you can learning explicitly versus learning implicitly. So to learn something explicitly is when, someone tells you, like, here's how you serve, you take 4 steps, you toss it on after your second step, you load your shoulder. So like learning explicitly, I think you definitely can learn that way, and probably can learn a little bit faster. But generally then when you get maybe under stress or when a problem arises, you're going to go to more an internal solution. Like I learned how to, I didn't toss on my shoulder. So like, that's what I got to do on the next one, versus no, I've got to try to hit it right there. So when you learn implicitly, where maybe the coach doesn't tell you exactly how to do it, but gives you a challenge, like, for example, like maybe putting, the rope from antenna to antenna. You've got to serve under the rope, hit it really flat. So instead of telling you like how to do it, you've got to hit it this part of the ball and toss it here and load like this. Just, try to figure out how to hit it between the rope and the net. You learn implicitly by exploring it and trying new things. And you don't necessarily exactly know how you hit it flat, but you've explored it and learned how to do it. So I think that's one of the, like, when you're put in stressful situations, you're not just turning to the coach, how do I do it? Or going to like a movement solution. Like I've figured stuff out on my own. I know how to solve problems, and I'm going to lean on that one. So I'm just a little less fragile athlete. I'm going all over the place. There's a lot. Yeah.
No,
there's a lot.
no, I follow that. And that kind of goes into the research that it was either you or Aaron brought up to me maybe last year of external triggers are better than internal triggers. Like you're saying, hit that spot instead of put my pinky toe facing that way or something like that.
Yeah. I think that's the most studied area of motor learning, is that an external focus of attention is far superior, and coaches just love internal focuses. Coaches are the king. I mean, I'm guilty of it. And it's really hard to coach, like only focusing on external. But I mean, we interviewed a guy, a researcher, a professor, and he's like, I tried for 3 or 4 years to prove that internal focuses were more beneficial. Like I believed it, like I was sold on it. And he tried like all these different experiments on how we could prove that an internal focus is more beneficial. It just isn't. And it's been tried for 20 years. And so having an external focus is, you're going to be more accurate. I mean, it makes sense. Like obviously, like if I was walking and thinking about my heel and someone told me, no, think about your like left toe and then, put your balance on your middle of your foot. Like you're just going to walk funny. But if try pushing the ground away, or just, walk to that corner, like you're going to walk pretty fluidly. So coaches are really good at getting us to really notice all these body parts and overthink those sorts of things. So I think that's the big challenge, is getting people onto more external focuses.
Yeah. When I read that research, I kind of cringed at myself of how guilty I was of that one.
Yeah.
At least I figured it out a little bit.
Yeah. And there's, it's a hard one, but I think that's the fun thing about coaching. Like if you're coaching on your soapbox and like just constantly pointing out mistakes and you're staying the same, then I just don't think it comes across the same way, and you're not growing. So I think it's fun as a coach to be challenging yourself the same way you're challenging your players, and trying to find like, little things you can say more succinctly or more effectively. And the science is there to guide us. But yeah, I mean, there's probably moments where you've got to point out like something internal, like a body part, but then how quickly can you, okay, so that we've got that established, like here's maybe, the foot you want to start with, but then like how quickly then can you move on to maybe an analogy or something external. So I think there's a way to do it, and that's reasonable. You don't have to be like a monk about this stuff. Like,
This is very interesting stuff. No, this is all stuff that you balance as a player as well, right? Like,
yeah,
especially as a setter, everybody doesn't set the same way. Everybody doesn't move the same way. Everybody's bodily functions are not the same, right? Your movements aren't the same. So then it's like, there's fundamentals for sure. And I don't think you could look at any sport. I don't think fundamentals have changed in the last X amount of years or whatever, right? So those stay the same, but the personality in which you bring behind each one of those fundamentals is completely individual. And there's some people that like, they're just great at hitting wrist away. You don't have to teach them that. They understand that concept, right? But it's like you're saying, and I've talked to Marv about this, he said there's 3 steps in a player's career. It's like motor learning process, right? It's like just dial in fundamentals. Then the second one is coach-player relationship and identifying like, this is what you need to do in these scenarios, blah, blah, blah. And the third one is like fulfillment as a player and a coach. So then it's like, we're just going to ride this out and like enjoy this relationship together because we've basically hit our peak. Now let's grow together. So I've thought about that a lot because I asked him that when I played in Czech and he came out to Prague to visit. And I asked him, and I was like, he's always got an answer, a definitive answer for something. So I asked him that question, and he gave me that answer, and I was like, when do you know? I was like, but when do you know when you're supposed to give the keys of the kingdom to some kid? And he's like, you just do. And if you're wrong, you're wrong. But like, that's kind of how life goes.
Yeah. Well, I think that to that point of there's so many areas of coaching to try to better understand. It's not just like understanding biomechanics or motor learning, but relationships and learning how to motivate people, and there's understanding statistics. So I think you can always like just understand it more deeply. And then like Marv, you got to go with your gut sometimes. Like that's just what I feel. I've learned as much as I can, and I've tried to get to know this person, and this is what I've this is what I know right now. So I've got to go with it. We're not going to go halfway with it, even if I'm not totally sure if it's right. But I think to the point, I think what you initially said, I'm changing now is I would normally just come in without even seeing my players and say, okay, here's how here's the keys to passing. Here's the keys to setting. Here's how you're supposed to do it. And now I'm trying to first observe, what are they doing? Is it serving? Like, are they able to set the ball accurately? Then like maybe my view of how you should set isn't, maybe it's not right for this individual person. So this approach is much more individual based versus like there's this one perfect way to do things. And then, if they are doing something that isn't beneficial, okay, how can I, instead of telling them explicitly, how can I change something in the environment? How can I put some sort of constraint on it that will get them to explore a new way, a more optimal way that they can do it? And that's where it can get pretty fun. And I mean, I'm an infant with this approach, but I'm excited to kind of dive into it more and start to understand it more.
Well, it's fun to grow with your athletes.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of like that's what you want, is when they understand you better than you understand them. Like, this is great. Like, you guys have you have your own identity, but you understand my philosophy, but we're now growing together and adapting and evolving this philosophy as our own.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I got one more for you, John, and it's from Betsy Flint.
Oh, wow.
Your assistant coach.
Yeah.
What's the most memorable learning experience you've had while you've been at LMU?
Most memorable learning experience. Betsy's always got hard questions.
That's why she's on your team.
I mean, there was a lot from just observing Tom. And, I think there's a lot that can be learned. Like I was saying, there's a lot can be learned from research, but I think a lot can be learned from observing a high-level coach. So I'd say just seeing him, the way he approached coaching, like we were just talking about how like there's so many areas, and I'm going to learn as much as I can about each area and get as good as I can at it. And even then it's not enough. I'm going to keep doing it. So I think seeing that and seeing him apply a lot of these, like a lot of this stuff, like you hear it or you read a paper and then it's hard to know how to apply it. So seeing him apply research was really beneficial. But I'd say for my own like personal growth, the most I learned is getting feedback from our athletes, and the feedback being a lot that I didn't communicate well enough. And I think what I tend to do is avoid confrontation too often. So what I've tried to do more, and it's still like really hard for me and really painful to do, but to just step into, uncomfortable conversations and, take on, something that's uncomfortable to talk about sooner, instead of like, oh, maybe if I don't talk about that in a week, it'll go away and I won't have to address it. But then it just lingers, and it's never. So I've tried to take those on quicker and more often. And what's helped me do it is just, again, to see it as like a rep. All right, like, okay, I really don't want to do this, but this is going to help me grow and be better at it, even though it's uncomfortable. So I guess that's.
It's like your wind sprints for coaching.
Yeah, you feel like you're going to throw up still. Yeah. Yeah. Like, But yeah, those are never fun. But they're always like uncomfortable situations. It's like the stress leading into it is 10 times worse than like once you're done with it, it's like, oh, that wasn't that hard. Or like that, like I feel way better. Like why did I worry so much about that? Or why was I stressed about it? Like, and even like you prolong it, then it's like 3 days of like, oh, I've got to tell this girl something that I really don't want to say it. Instead of like, let's just address it. Let's get to it. Let's be direct and be honest. And being honest is usually more kind than, dancing around stuff.
I think the best coaches, managers, athletes I've been around with are not like, they're not volatile by any means, but they're certainly not afraid of confrontation.
Mm-hmm.
And they're usually people that are, not to say that you're not hyper competitive, but they're people that are like hyper competitive. And so they don't think twice.
Yeah.
They just do it because it's the heat of battle. And it's like, I need this from you. Sorry if I went the wrong way. We can talk about that later. But right now, I need you to listen to me, and you're playing like shit or like you're doing great, and it could be like you're doing great or whatever. Because that's a form of confrontation that people don't want to say that's confrontation. People always assume confrontation is a negative statement coming from somebody. But telling people you're doing great too is a form of confrontation. And some people don't even feel confident in themselves to say something like that. And it's like, hey, you're actually doing a good job.
No, I think what you said, the confidence, I think as a coach, it takes the experience and the belief in yourself that what you're going to say is actually true, at least true to you. So I think if I don't know, there's lots of times where like, well, I don't know if this is even right, what I'm going to say. Like, if you're doubting yourself going into an uncomfortable conversation, then you're really not going to want to do it. So yeah, I guess really, when you've had so many of those experiences and you can really trust, I guess, your gut, then you can really take on those conversations. So there's something to doing it for whatever the 10,000 hours or whatever it is.
Sure. And the worst part is like, you're always going to blow it.
Yeah.
You're never going to get it right every single time. And you're never going to know every single experience. Like there's going to be one kid that walks out of there and it's like, she's just not happy or he's not happy and he's never going to think about you or she's never going to think about you in the same light. But at least you tried.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what I've found is
like I did my best.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I found doing that, making that effort is way better than just hoping it fades away. Like it doesn't.
Yeah.
And like giving it that, like, all right, you got to kind of, I guess you got to go for it sometimes. And yeah, I think that's for me. That's the hard one for me, is just to continue to push myself into that. Cause I erred towards like, if I put it off, it might disappear.
Yeah. For me, it brings peace of mind.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, that sucked. But usually both parties walk away from it relieved. Because it's you.
Yeah.
The other party's feeling the same kind of stress.
Yeah.
And it's like, at least we both got it off our chests, whether we liked it or not. But it is what it is now.
Yeah. Do you do it with teammates now?
Yeah, for sure. I played with one guy last year. I felt like every 2 weeks we'd butt heads. And like, I mean, there was a point where I was like, I don't care if you like my sets. That's not my problem. That's your problem. But at the end of the day, I'm your setter. It's like, you're either going to have to commit to it or not. Like that's your decision.
Yeah. How did you take it?
He took it okay. He still had ups and downs, but but at least he knew where I stood.
You're right.
And I knew where he stood, because he's like, I just don't like you. And I was like, well, that's fine. Like, that's all right. But we're still on the same team. So when we're out there, can we just act like pros?
Yeah.
And we did. That is one thing that we did. We were like, I wasn't mad. He was a good player. I was like, I'm going to set you.
Yeah. Yeah, and it can feel good to be heard, like to get the things that you're bottling up, even just getting it out can be relief. Yeah. Other like when you're getting someone, you teach someone explicitly, like you can really see them improve right there, and that feels good as a coach.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like that's the.
Sure.
But
It sounds like you
Yeah.
guys are both drinking the same Kool-Aid over there.
Yeah, what do you think? Where am I missing? Where am I off?
No. I think it's all great. I think there is a fine line between giving. I'm sure you've noticed this as a parent, and what I see as like people that are parents. There's a fine line between letting your kid go through everything and then giving them advice after, instead of giving them a little bit of forewarning.
Yeah.
So it feels like this is kind of on the same edge of like, right, you got to kind of trial by error for you. And then,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I was going to say it earlier, when I was younger, like 16, 17, I got the opportunity to work with Bill Neville. And because he lives up in Seattle. And I'm totally that way. But when I was growing up, it was like you learn, it's like baptism by fire. You got to figure it out on the fly. There's no, like nobody taught me how to pass. I just figured it out.
Right.
Right. But then he asked me, he's like, describe how you pass. Describe how you, because he calls it overhead passing. He says there's two forms of passing. Setting doesn't exist. And, how do you do these things? And I couldn't describe it. And he was like, you got to start thinking about this stuff. Because when you're in situations with your attackers, you're going to have to start describing certain scenarios. And if you can't describe the way you play, how are you supposed to describe scenarios to people in the heat of the moment? And I was totally taken away. I was like, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right, So that's why I was thinking that's that fine line of if they can't explain it, then do they really know it?
Yeah. I think what happens though a lot is people explain it, but it's like tennis players forever thought they hit over the ball.
Right.
Like you explain but you don't actually explain what you do. Like I don't think we actually.
Yeah.
So I think maybe there's value, but I think being able to explain something maybe more tactically, like, yeah, when I run a 3 and a go, like it gets the right side, whatever. Like I could see that. Or like being able to explain, like, after the ball comes out of my hands, like I don't know, my right hand comes, I don't know, like really understanding that nuance. I don't know how far that gets you.
But I think of it more as like a blocker. Say a guy's just killing a sharp angle.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's like, okay, drop your right hand. Now, if you don't know how to block, right, and you're just like, I just block, then it's like, drop my right hand. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
That's where it gets.
But even that, I mean, drop your right hand is.
Right. Yeah, right. So it can be totally taken a different way.
Yeah. I mean, there has to be some kind of common language. Like
100%.
I've coached with John before, so if we talk volleyball, there's a somewhat common language. Maybe we're not saying all the words the same. Whereas if I went into maybe someone on the East Coast into their gym, they're using words I've never used before.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah.
Walking into your guys' gym and then hearing you talk about the first drill and all the vernacular you used, I was like, okay, I'm in. I compete with this guy. I know exactly what he's saying, know exactly what he's trying to do here. I'm good.
Yeah.
But if I was to branch off into like another part of the volleyball tree, I don't know if it would be the same.
Yeah. No, that's an important point. I think that goes into culture too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's like then the question is like, yeah, how deep do you want to go into that language? Like, or how much do we need to dissect it? Can it, I think that's where, and it's probably individual based too. Like we have some players who I could overload them with technical feedback and it wouldn't really phase them. They just keep competing. And then like some player, you give them like one internal focus and like, they're going to obsess about that for, way too long. And it's going to distract from like it doesn't even look like you're trying to put the ball away. Like it looks like you're trying, you're thinking only about your small right step.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's where it gets tricky. I think I don't know. Have you guys read the MVP machine?
No. What's it about? Tell
It's
us.
really good. Yeah, I'd recommend it. This kind of got me going on this approach a little bit. In a more like, I've read some of the textbooks, which are, rough to get through, but like this is a story. It's the like modern day Moneyball in baseball.
Okay.
Where I think for a long time, like baseball, they didn't really. It's just like you get to the majors and like managers just oversee the team. They don't try to get you to improve. And like the modern day thing is like now it's all like skill acquisition. Like how can we get people to throw faster and hit home runs, like that sort of stuff. So like actually like developing players. And forever, like coaches in baseball would tell hitters like you got to hit down on the ball, or you've got to like you've got to swing through the ball. And I mean, I guess the first thing is like the pitch comes from a higher point and it comes down, and if you hit down, like you have less time to hit it. But that was like the tradition. Like that's what good fundamentals were like to like hit that way. And just that point of like coaches have an idea and it's wrong a lot, and it's not even necessarily what players do. But then, as analytics came in, they found like hitting the ball in the air is far superior. Like you hit like 200 percentage points higher. And so like coaches for, decades and still in the majors, like all these coaches are saying the wrong thing. But you actually want to hit the ball this way. And so, and then even like velocity, like the way velocity was taught, it was all these like internal, like all these things you got to do. And the people who have really found or have been able to get people to throw faster have not been like major league coaches, but these little kind of like science geeks who like there's a place called Driveline. I think it's actually up in Washington. And they found, I mean, they had these like high speed cameras but the biggest thing was like weighted baseballs. Like having like, instead of telling someone exactly how to throw a ball, like to be able to throw a weighted baseball effectively, like you have to kind of self-organize and have good mechanics or you're going to get hurt. So they just change, like constantly are changing the weight of the baseball. And people, you kind of see people like figure, you adjust like your torque and what all the stuff that matters in pitching, and they're able to raise their velocity. So I don't know, it's all these like stories around things like that, where generally like coaches' feedback has been either like it hasn't made a difference or it's like been dead wrong. Like, because it's our eye, it's like what your coach told you, versus like, yeah, you get these like high speed cameras, you get analytics. And then, yeah, you put players in an environment that like pushes them to use proper fundament or proper technique, then they're going to start to figure it out on their own.
For sure. At what point is that player ready for that though? That's the next question too. Is it's like you can't do that with 12-year-olds, can you? Or do you? Like,
I
Yeah.
think that might be some of the art of coaching right there, is identifying where they're at on
right.
that
It's like that
on that timeline.
three-step process that Marv was saying is like, when do you move on to the next point?
Yeah. Yeah. Again, it's like, do you have to tell someone to like face the server or like pass with two arms? Do you have to explicitly say it? Or like maybe you have to wait another day, but if like a 12-year-old gets a chance to like learn, oh yeah, like passing with two arms is better. Like I learned that. Or facing the server instead of facing that way. I'm able to, like, if as a coach can keep nudging, all right, no, try to pass it here, you're passing it there. Like if they can self-organize and figure it out on their own, it just takes a lot of patience. Like I think and as a coach, you got to keep like, all right, no, try passing it there, try passing it here, and let them try to like kind of nudge them to this external goal.
Sure.
But yeah, I don't know. I mean, and also I think we put kids on adult size fields and they're going to have like really, like you're going to hit like this, right, on a net. So if we can, again, like change the environment, like lower the net, get a light ball, allow them to jump, like the baby court in Hawaii, you watch those guys, like they all have really good fundamentals. They played a lot on that court. And so I think there's a lot to like coming up with fun games, having an environment that rewards, I don't know if good fundamentals is the right word, but yeah, that'd be my thought. But I don't know. I haven't done it enough.
I think
Like
Dave.
futsal
Yeah.
for soccer. It's
Oh yeah, street games.
more reps. Yeah.
It's all the street games. Those kids that grew up playing street games, that's where a lot of the elite players are at. They played street games.
I don't know if you guys know who Vital Heinen is. He's the head coach for the men's Polish national team. And he's a head coach at Perugia, Wilfredo Leon's team. And regardless of age, gender, whatever, I mean, these guys are the best team in the world potentially. He starts every day with like 30 minutes of games, like incredibly creative games. And like I'm a huge proponent of that too. I think games are like the greatest thing ever because it stimulates you. You have to work as a team. You're also working on your fundamentals, and like you're becoming an athlete, which I also think is something that's not taught enough with younger generations, is how to incorporate your whole body into sport because of the specialization that's happening now.
Yeah.
Like you come to Europe and everybody can do a somersault and they can all juggle a soccer ball and they can all throw. They can do everything. And then and like the guys that come over here, because they're obviously good athletes, they figure it out fast and they can get it together that are Americans. But most guys, like you walk into any gym, like you walk into Pepperdine's gym when you were there, and you ask some guy to juggle a soccer ball, it's like 5 guys.
Yeah.
Right? And that's not a difficult skill.
Yeah. No, I think the game stuff is great. Like, I mean, obviously like the diversity, but to like throw a new problem each day in a fun game. And we did crazy stuff like this semester. I would have like probably laughed at what I was doing a couple years ago, which is a good lesson. Like, don't be too judgmental. But yeah, I would like, in beach, it's great. You can just pick up the lines. So we picked up the lines and moved them back 5 feet. So one side was like basically a football field and one side was like short court. I mean, not quite short court. It was like 15 feet long. And the other side, then it was like, all right, game to 21. And not saying much else. I did like an ace is worth 2 and a first ball side out's worth 2. And I mean, I think with beach, it makes more sense in that you're going to have this strong like headwind at times, and like the court's going to feel that long. So it's like it's a legitimate problem to try to figure out, and one side's going to feel small. But then, like how can I, as a passer, like I'm getting this ball on me a lot faster. I have a lot of space to cover, and if they get an ace, they get 2 points. Like you're gonna have to get, instead of me saying like, okay, look for cues, look at her shoulder, like you're gonna figure out pretty fast if you want to win this game, like how to pick up on cues.
Oh yeah. Sure.
And then as an attacker, like you've got this small space to work in. It's like, short court, you get all these, there's benefits there. But yeah, I think there's just like fun ways to manipulate. Like we'd play on a low net sometimes. I'd lower the net by 6 inches a foot. All of a sudden, serves are getting over, like, again, like they're having to read information way faster. And then the physicality at the net, like you see blockers making moves, you're seeing more covers. There's these like things that emerge, which again, like I would have been super judgmental about it. But I'm not like, it's like one game a day. We'll just start like, all right, who's going to take advantage of the environment, like a low net, and who's going to figure out how to adapt and win. And yeah, I think those games are like, they're great teachers and they're good challenges each day. And lots of players will go like, this isn't fair, the net's low. Like you're going to go make excuses first, but the more you do it, it just starts to become like, all right, I'm a problem solver. Like, and I feel like high level athletes, they're constantly problem solving. And the more coaches are just explicit, like this is how you do it, this is how you move, you take away opportunities to grow that skill of problem solving. So yeah.
I'm with you.
Yeah, I'm on a I don't know.
You're on a tear.
I'm going crazy with it. Yeah, I mean, and like Paula's sick of me because like, hey, what do you think of this? It's like, you got to stop talking to me about this. Can't you like call Tom or call someone else? But Zoom's been great. I've got to Zoom with so many like people to ask them.
Yeah, it's a great argument. It's a great philosophical argument to have with yourself and other people because there's no right or wrong. Just totally dependent on you and your kids.
Yeah.
You could have really, really sophisticated kids that are just creative and they pick things up really, really fast. And then you could have another group of kids that's just, they're not so smart. They're not so good. Like the kids that complain, those are
Yeah.
the kids that aren't very creative. Like they're not great
Yeah.
solvers. That's why they just start complaining. You get
Yeah.
up to them, and they're like, "All right, I got to lower the bar a little bit for these kids," And
Yeah.
also,
Yeah. You gotta adapt it for sure. But then as the culture becomes like, yeah, we don't like the people who are winning aren't making excuses about this challenge. Like they're trying to figure it out. Like people want to fit in. They start to go with it. And especially when you call them out, like,
I was gonna ask, you call them out?
oh yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was just checking because that's also a big. I mean, that's part of confrontation. So
Yeah. Yeah. In practice, it's not, yeah, it's more like we're pulling your scholarship. Like, I don't want to have that, like that conversation sucks. Yeah. Yeah. Or like, you're not going to start because you're not good. But yeah, no, that stuff in practice, like, yeah. Are you guys even trying to solve the problem? You're talking about just stuff that's out of your control. Like what's in your control that you could do right now? And like the hard part is as a coach, like you kind of, I feel like at least to me, I see an answer and to not give it to them. Like we were doing, we used to do like, you got to be straight and simple with your platform. And I think that still probably matters. But so we were trying, all right, let's put a towel on their shoulders. So there's like a towel here.
yeah,
All right, see if you can keep the towel on. And you see them like, I mean, my brother was trying it and like he's standing straight up and like trying to pass the ball. It's like, and to not say anything is hard. Like, all right, now it fell off. Like, all right, here comes the serve. And like constant, you see passers like do this stuff a lot. And like, all right, so you can keep the towel on, you get 3 points if you keep it on. Here comes like another tough serve. But yeah, to like have the patience and give them the chances. And sometimes like giving them a model. All right, watch her. All right, she kept the towel on, you try. So instead of, again, like just finding fun ways to improve your ability to put the ball where you want or do what you want. That's got me like, I'm just constantly trying to figure out what those are.
it's a solid battle, my friend.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not even an infant with this stuff. You guys got to talk. Casey Kreider, I mean, he's on it.
I can't talk to Casey.
I think I'm going to see him.
It's
See him
hard.
sometime over
It's hard,
the
yeah.
break.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We probably Zoom once a week. I mean, he's going to start his PhD. Like he's gone far. But yeah, he's it feels like almost like if like two like physicians were talking to each other. It's like a different language, right? It's like it's not even, yeah, it's like at a level where it's like it's hard I think it's hard for him to talk even with a coach. Yeah, but it's cool that he's not so knowledgeable. Was he there with you at all? Did you guys a year after?
My assistant coach.
Okay.
I had a
Okay.
he told me nothing.
Really?
Yeah, I mean like little to nothing. He actually was our second setter.
Oh yeah. He was pretty new. He was probably pretty new to coaching then.
Yes, he and JD were our assistants, and both of them played on our second team, which made a pretty good team.
Yeah.
But he didn't say a lot. I remember talking to him actually at Marv's camp, and he's like, "You were way better than I ever was," and I didn't really know what to say at that time. I was kind of just like, "Do your thing, Matt.
Yeah.
I'll just help you whenever you feel like it,"
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of how I felt. Because having him, and then I had Winder the next year, I wanted to like outright beat them. Because they were the guys before me.
Yeah.
So I wanted that respect as a player, that it was like,
Yeah.
I was,
Yeah.
was just as good as you when you were here. So like Winder and I butted way more than Casey and I.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's when you guys are, yeah. No, you guys are that close in age, like you and Casey. It's hard I think it's hard to coach, and especially when you think like this player's better than me.
Yeah.
That's tough. I bet he would have been different. Yeah. Like 5 years later.
Right. And Winder I don't think Winder's ever had identity crisis.
Yeah.
He has he probably masked it pretty well.
Yeah.
But, yeah, when he was there, he was like, "It's my way or the highway," and I was
Yeah.
also, "Well, it's my way or the highway." Like I was the first team All American last year. Like, what the hell are you gonna tell me? Kind of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then trying to build that relationship was actually really fun. And by the end, I didn't want him to leave. Part of me wanted him to leave because I wanted to win a championship by myself. But at the same
Mm.
time, I was like, "You made me me. Like I would
Yeah.
love to have you around as just as
Yeah.
you know."
And who'd you have after him?
Dave Hunt came back.
Okay.
Dave Hunt kind of stepped in as that setting coach guide.
Okay. How'd you like Dave?
Dave was great. They're so different. All three of them were so different. Dave is
Yeah.
very. I've told Jackson this. Winder taught me how to win, and Dave taught me how to run an offense. His Winder's like, "Why are you jump setting? Just set a high ball to Josh. He'll score." You know? And Dave was like, "We got to run quick from the 10-foot line, and we got to set the D the long way and open up our offense a little bit more," which is great. I'm appreciative for both of them because now when I go back and coach setters, I understand both concepts.
Mm.
Or as a setter now, obviously I still utilize both concepts of like some matches you got to play to win, and one guy's going to carry you to the promised land, and other matches you can spread it, and
Yeah.
everybody eats and everybody's happy. But yeah, Winter's pretty good at. He just had a very good understanding of like these guys need it more than anybody else,
Mm.
and I thought that was really unique. He was like, "You got to give Josh 11 balls a game, and you got to give Parker the other 8, and whatever's left you can give to the middles, I guess, middles and Kyle." And I was
Yeah.
like, "Eh."
Yeah.
Yeah, because that's how
That,
he won.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I think that adaptability is big to be able to do more than one thing.
for sure. For sure. And it's really fun competing against him every day in practice because he practiced with us too.
Did he?
He was
Yeah.
another setter, and
Yeah.
competing against him and seeing how many times he wanted to explode when he was the assistant coach. So like part of him
You
was
couldn't.
better, but at the other part of him was like, I can't explode or I'm gonna lose these kids.
Yeah.
You know?
See, Chip didn't care about that. He would just break people. Like, I don't know if you guys know Kevin Ensley. Yeah, he would be like I mean, Kevin quit his senior year, and I think it was probably because of Chip. Basically, like anytime the ball, like if it was like a free, I think it seemed like almost any ball. Like if Chip had to move a step, especially on a free ball, like all right, you're out. And he'd put in like the guy who's like flipping score. We called him Scuba Steve or like Brad Carter. And like Kevin, like yeah, that just crushed him. But it was like he's like, yeah, doghouse rules. You're out. Scuba, get in. Scuba Steve. Yeah, Chip was brutal.
Yeah, I think Marv told me because he was like, you got to be a little bit harder on your attackers. I was like, I'm trying, like I'm trying to hold the standard. And he goes, Chip McCaw. He said one of his mules didn't kill a ball, and he's like, hey, is that ball good? I said, yeah, it's fine. And he punched him in the gut and said, time, you better kill that ball.
Yeah, yeah. Chip's a different breed.
He's,
That guy's he's crazy.
he is a very intense. I met him at camp, and I was like, you're just intense.
Yeah, yeah. He's mellowed out, but yeah, him and Vern, those two guys.